Hello, I am fine art photographer and Olympus educator Matt Suess from Bozeman, Montana, and today we're going to have some fun. We're going to do a battle of sky replacement photo programs. We got the brand new Photoshop 2021, which just came out with its sky replacement feature. I also have Luminar 4, which came out about a year ago and really has been the gold standard for easy and really good sky replacements. And we also have a Luminar AI. I have a beta version of that was just released to me a couple days ago, and we're going to pit all three of them up against each other and see which one is the winner for sky replacement. Now, just to set up a little bit of the rules here in the beginning, I did not go and select the easiest photos to try and see which one of these is going to be better. I picked some really challenging photos that I thought would really give us an idea on what the strengths and weaknesses are of each one of these programs in terms of sky replacement. Luminar 4 has really been the gold standard of sky replacement since it came out. I'm a big fan of it. And as a matter of fact, I offer free training on sky replacement in 2 of my 3 cloud kits that are available for purchase that feature a bunch of clouds and skies for your sky replacement. So, I am a little bit partial to Luminar 4. Can Luminar AI, anything new about Luminar AI that's going to blow this out of the water? What about Photoshop? How well is Photoshop going to do? So let's stop wasting time here and let's start looking at some photos. Okay, we're going to start off in Luminar 4, and I have a photo here. This is a raw file, and this is a tricky one that I thought. We got some windows. This is photographed indoors, looking outside through some windows of the Tetons, and we have a sky in the background that we can see here. So again, this is a Sony raw file, and let's go ahead and see how the sky replacement feature is going to work inside of Luminar 4. I'm already here. I got my sky replacement set. Let me click on sky location or sky selection, and let's go ahead and load a custom sky. And I'm going to grab this cloud over here that is in my Ultimate 400 cloud and sky kit, and I'm going to click on open. And we'll just wait for this to process just a little bit. And we can see here, it looks like it actually did the sky. Looks like we got a good replacement, but actually I'm a little bit suspicious of these windows up on top here. Let me actually grab another sky. Let's go ahead and grab something that's a little bit easier to see here. I'm going to grab this sky from my Desert Sunset kit. And let's take a look here. I think with the color, we'll be able to see this a little bit more obvious. Okay, so right off the bat, didn't do any adjustments at all, and we can see that Luminar 4 is having a problem with these 2 windows over here. And if we zoom in, looks like it's not really getting these full windows onto the side. So let's see if we can fix that. If we go ahead and adjust our sky global, then it looks like that was able to take care of that issue right up on top there with the 2 windows. Up on here, still not seeing the sky coming through in that window. Okay, now see if I max out the sky global. Now it is. Now the sunset is fully in view through all these windows here. And we'll go back over here and let's just take a look. And okay, great. We can see it through the windows here. But now look, we got an issue with the mountain and the clouds are overlapping the mountain. If I turn this off and then back on, we can see that real bad difference, not really good. The sky is bleeding into the mountains there. And I bet you we're going to see the same thing right over here on the right-hand side too. And in fact, we can see the sky coming down. If I try and maybe do some more adjustments, maybe close the gaps, that seems to be fixing it a little bit more. Maybe do some sky local and see what that is doing. We're still getting some weird imaging going on down here. Let's go ahead and come back over here and see what was happening. And again, okay, so we have an issue here that's not really going to be fixable in terms of making any slider adjustments here. We're going to have to, basically what we're going to have to do is edit the mask and use the brush tool and brush out the clouds in the mountains. So, got a little bit of work to do here, but, we can at least do a decent sky replacement. Let's go take a look at Luminar AI and see if there's any difference with that. Now here is my raw file. We'll go into the edit. I've already thrown a sky in there, and let's take a look at the results. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this whole thing. We're just going to start right from the beginning, adding that sky so we can just see if there was any adjustments that I had to make on that. So let's go ahead and open that. Now, while we're waiting for that sky to load, you'll notice that the perspective's a little bit different in here. In the new Luminar AI, it has some cool perspective controls and things like that. So I've already gone ahead and got rid of that wide angle look to it. Okay, so right off the bat, throwing this in here looks good. It didn't do anything with those two windows up there. The sky is going through. Still got that issue over here on these two windows. Again, we'll have to do the sky global, make some adjustments. And let's see here. We're still not seeing it through those windows. Okay, now we finally start to see it through the window. And again, we do have an issue with the sky, the clouds bleeding off into the mountains. So again, with Luminar AI on this raw file, we're going to have a little bit more work to do still, just like in Luminar 4. But right off the bat, it did a little bit better job finding the sky. Let's go back to Luminar 4 and let's actually take a look at a TIFF file. Now this TIFF file was made from that raw file that we just saw. I opened it up in Photoshop and Camera Raw, made a couple quick adjustments, did some perspective control, and then saved it as a regular TIFF file. And I opened it up here in Luminar 4 and check this out. Luminar does not see the sky. I can't select the sky at all. So I cannot add a new sky inside of Luminar 4 to the TIFF file like I could with the raw file. So very interesting there. Let's go ahead and see if Luminar AI has that same issue. So here is the TIFF file, same exact TIFF file that I had in Luminar 4. Same thing. And look at same results. I cannot replace the sky on this file when it was converted to a TIFF file, but I was able to do it when it was in its raw state. Very interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at Photoshop and let's grab this file. Now we're looking at the TIFF file here and let's go ahead and go edit, sky replacement. And here we are. I'm going to go ahead and switch that sky so that we have the same exact sky. And let's grab that right here. And let's go ahead and take a look. No adjustments have been made yet. Just opened it up in Photoshop and check this out. Sky, it was able to find the full window on the sky right off the bat there. There's a little bit of cloud bleeding over on the tips of these peaks over here to the left. It found those two windows perfectly. And if we come over here, everything looks good down in that corner as well. So right off the bat here, I'm going to call Photoshop a winner on this one, in this battle for this photo. You know, of course, I can make some more fine-tune adjustments and whatnot, but I mean, you know, right off the bat, I'm starting with an easier to work with photo. Any of these other adjustments down here, I can actually go ahead and use the masking tool here, or the brush tool, and reduce the clouds on top of the mountain, get rid of them right there. Or because Photoshop does layers and does the sky replacement in layers, I can just hit OK. This will output to new layers and I'll have all those adjustments. We'll take a look at that in another photo. But right off the bat now on this difficult photo, I'm going to give the edge to Photoshop. I'm calling Photoshop the winner on that. Let's go to Luminar 4 and let's take a look at another raw file. This is from an Olympus camera of mine. Raw file. I went and just made a couple adjustments here in AI Enhance just to brighten it up just a little bit. So let's go ahead into sky replacement and whoa, check this out. In Luminar 4, it's not seeing the sky. I don't know if it's because it's vertical, the AI is getting a little confused or what have you, but I cannot do a sky replacement on the raw file here inside of Luminar 4. Let's go to Luminar AI. And I believe this is the raw file here. Let's go ahead and see if Luminar AI can do any better. And yes, Luminar AI will be able to process this raw file. Let's go ahead and grab this sky photo from my Ultimate 400 kit. And we'll load that in there and wait for it to preview. There we are. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just brighten this up a bit. And you know, look at this. If I hit the off and on before and after, there's a little bit of an issue going on right up in top here. You know, for the most part, it didn't do too bad of a job with the sky replacement, but you can see over here, there's just some weirdness going on right over there. So if I increase my sky global, take a look, see if we can knock that down. Well, it knocked it down a little bit, but again, still some weirdness, some darkness in here with it being really bright over there. Let me just try and max out my sky global, maybe see what sky local or closed gaps are doing. Nothing too much to really help that little bit there. You know, it's a little bit of a, being a little bit critical here, but it is an issue. Let's just zoom out for a second. And you know what? Let's turn this preview off and then on. Now look at what happened. With this sky global maxed out and with me adjusting these other settings, the sky has bled over into the cactus. So now I have this little issue up on top here that I'm going to have to, probably deal with later probably even outside of Luminar. Right now, I'm going to have to, in the masking tools, I'm going to have to mask out this whole part of the cactus where the sky is bleeding over into it. So, we can do a sky replacement here on the raw file in Luminar AI. We couldn't do it in Luminar 4, so we do have that advantage, but we do have a little bit of work that we're going to have to do to get this photo being perfect. Let's go to Luminar 4 and let's check out the TIFF. Same thing that I did in the previous photo. It was a raw file that I converted to a TIFF file inside of Photoshop. And now take a look at this sky selection. We can do the sky replacement. So pretty interesting. Same file, well, different file. I mean, same image. Everything, I don't know how the AI is getting confused here on this, but it is. But we can now do this sky replacement. We do still have the same issues that I just went through with Luminar AI in terms of the clouds bleeding into the cactus and that little issue up on top here. Let's go to Luminar AI and let's just see about that TIFF file. So this is the TIFF file. You can see this right here. Let's go to edit and let's see if we can. Okay, so we can load the custom sky and we can open that. And everything is just fine, again, with the same caveat of having the bleeding cloud going into the cactus and that little issue up on top here. So Luminar AI, at least we'll be able to see this one in the TIFF file and the raw. Luminar 4 will only see it in the TIFF file. Let's see what Photoshop is going to do. Let me grab that image and we'll zoom in just a little bit more. And let's go edit, sky replacement. And let's grab that cloud that we were just using, the same exact sky. There we are. And let's take a look here. All right, so let me brighten the sky up again. And it did darken my overall image. So I'm going to lower my lighting adjustments all the way, lower my color adjustments all the way. And let's go ahead and brighten the sky up just a little bit. Okay. Not a bad job, but we do have a little bit of blue fringing going on over here. I can go ahead and try and use the control shift edge. That is actually minimizing that. And fade edge is all the way up to the top. Let me zoom in just a little bit more and see if there's anything else we can see in here. And okay, so I'm not going to be able to completely get rid of this little blue haloing just on the edges of these needles of the cactus. I can minimize it, and that's pretty minimized right there. Not a very bad job at all. But what I can do also to really get rid of that look, let me zoom out, and I have my move tool. I can just easily just click and move this cloud. And if I move that cloud so that the needles have a blue background, you're not going to see that edging anymore. And now we have a perfect, perfect photo. Not only can I do that, I can also scale the image too, and then move that around. So I'm zooming in on those clouds, making those clouds even bigger and bigger, and then moving them around. And so very easy controls to do. Just click and drag. You can move it left, right, up and down, scale it, enlarge it, shrink it down. You can even flip it too. Now, do we have that same option in Luminar? We don't. We can only adjust the horizon position up and down. We cannot adjust the scale, but we can flip the sky too. Same thing in Luminar AI. Let me bring this back over into Luminar AI. We can adjust the horizon position, so raise that up or down, but we can't zoom in on the clouds. So if we wanted to try and get rid of any issues that we had there and hide, we would have to open the cloud sky up in Luminar, edit it separately, and kind of get an idea and guess where you want the placement of this cactus relative to the sky, export that file, open it back up inside of Luminar. So on a couple different accounts, Photoshop really is the winner here out of all three of these programs in terms of doing this particular sky replacement. All right, let's go back to Luminar 4, and I have another image here. Now this one here, I'm going to open this one up. I already have the sky inside here. It's the same sky that we actually just used in the previous image. And I've already made some adjustments here. And let's see here. One thing I'm going to do is brighten up this sky so we can see it a little bit better. This was a darker image, but we can brighten up the sky. I am maxed out though. I can only brighten up the sky this much. If I needed to brighten up the sky any brighter than this, I'm stuck. I can only open up this cloud photo individually inside of Luminar, brighten it up as its own photo, and then export it and then reopen it back up here in sky replacement. So, you do have some control over your background image, but it is a little bit limited, especially if you start needing to do some extreme adjustments. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. This was just brought in. And if we take a look, I chose this particular photo because this has a lot of fine detail, a lot of small, tiny little branches and leaves. And, this is a typical photo that we would want to have a sky replacement on. Let me show you what it looked like beforehand. Just a boring blue sky. So, hey, let's throw some clouds in there. Let's zoom in. So this issue right here, we're going to have to fix. So let's start increasing sky global and see if that works. Keep on bringing that up. And is it going to get rid of all of that? Nope, still got some issues there. If we try and close the gaps, whoa, okay, so check that out. By increasing the closed gaps, I just noticed that Luminar was eating some of my branches. Let's maybe lower the sky global just a little bit and increase the sky. There we are. So the closed gaps was the slider that we needed to do. Right off the bat, when it was down here, we were losing detail. We were losing our branches. Luminar was eating them away. So we increase this and we bring that back. It's still got a little bit of issues here and there. It's almost like, really fine tuning these controls, trying to get it just perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look up here. And this is something that I've noticed with Luminar on some foliage, that it gets a little punchy, a little bit too almost psychedelic. Look at the yellowness, the brightness, chartreuse actually of these leaves up here. That wasn't really there originally. There's with no sky and with the sky. And let's zoom in just a little bit more and check out and see what's going on here. And look, it's just blowing all this detail out right on the edging here. What is causing that? Well, it looks like sky global is what's affecting that. But then if I lower sky global there, I'm going to have issues elsewhere. And then now all of a sudden, look at what it did over here. So removing the sky global, now all of a sudden we have issues over here. So this one here is, it's a real, it's a real difficult fix. You're just going to have to sort of cut your losses on this as to, you might have to manually desaturate that if this is a problem for you visually. I mean, for me, it kind of bothers me a little bit with that sky getting that bad. Here's another issue down here. Let's go ahead and take a look and increase the sky global. And let me just turn this off and on. And look at that. Look at, in particular, down here on this peak in Zion. And I'll zoom in just a little bit more. All right, sky replacement is on, it's off. It's on, it's off. Look at the shadowing it's doing. This is part of the cloud, the background, that is blending over into my mountain here. You can see a line over here. Let's change this horizon position. And look at it shifted and it moved. It's literally these clouds, my sky is bleeding into the mountain. So again, we're going to have to go with the edit mask and really brush that out. So, this is a really difficult photo. Luminar's doing an okay job. There's some manual work that has to be done. There's a little bit of limitations in terms of, or acceptance that you have to do in terms of some of these leaves. Is Luminar AI any different? Let's go ahead and check that out here. So I've gone ahead and I've already made some adjustments on this one. So it really pretty much did the same exact thing. So I had to increase the closed gaps, increase the sky global, zooming up on top here. I'm still getting some of that funkiness up in these branches up here, the leaves in particular. It's actually darkening these a little bit over there, and that could just be from some different adjustments that I have, but it's still, if we look down in here, it's still making those really punchy. And let's go ahead and take a look on the mountain here. And yeah, we can still see the cloud bleeding over on that mountain here inside of Zion. So really the same exact issues. Let's go into Photoshop and let me cancel out of here. Let's get to this photo and let's load this up in sky replacement. Okay, first off, what I'm going to do is brighten my sky. So let's get this looking a little bit better so we can see things in here. And let's zoom in. And first thing we're going to do is come over to here and see if Photoshop ate any of our branches, maybe just a little bit. Not too terrible. I think if we use this fade edge, if we can fade that back a little bit, see if the shift edge does anything. There we go. So lowering that shift edge helped restore the details. But I mean, right off the bat, we didn't have that weirdness that was going on with Luminar around these particular branches, and with Luminar eating a bunch of those branches. Let's go up and see how it's doing with our leaves. Let me go ahead and turn this preview off and on. And look at that. It's doing a much, much better job. And I have the lighting adjustments on. So if I turn those off, we should probably see no difference at all. So no difference at all. I'm not seeing these all of a sudden get worse and blown out with the color and with the brightness. So did a great job over there. Let's go ahead and check on the mountain and see what is going on there. Let me turn the preview off. No sky replacement, sky replacement. Cycling that back off and on. We can see that Photoshop is doing a much better job not bleeding in the clouds into this mountain here in Zion. So I'm going to give this one a victory to Photoshop as well. Now, I do want to point out one other thing here too, and I'm going to go ahead and click on OK because I just wanted to show you what ends up happening when you do commit this to Photoshop, and you make sure you have the new layers selected. Click on OK. And let me drag, I got my layers panel off to the side here. Now this is what happens. It ends up giving you all of these layers. These are the layers that, here is the mask that it did. So this is the mask that Photoshop did to replace the sky. You can now go in here and completely edit this. We can see here that there's a little bit of darkness in here. I mean, I didn't even notice that when we did the sky replacement, but there might be a little bit of a haloing in there. So you can go ahead and adjust the mask to make sure that you get rid of that haloing. Another great thing is too, I can go here and let's go ahead and add a new adjustment layer. Let me go grab my adjustment layers and let's go ahead and grab a curve adjustment layer and click on OK. And let's bring my curves over here. I can go ahead and make further adjustments just to the sky, completely independent of my foreground. Now, not only that, I can go ahead, there's a layer here already for my foreground adjustments. I didn't make any foreground adjustments. Remember, I zeroed them out. Well, it lowered the opacity. So let me just increase the opacity here. And now I can go ahead and make adjustments to just my foreground layer and adjust the tone on that. So your control is really limitless inside of Photoshop, having access to all these individual layers and all these individual masks to really fine tune your image that you're not going to be able to do inside of Luminar with the AI. Let's go ahead back to Luminar 4 and we're going to take a look at this file here. This is a TIFF file. Same TIFF file we're going to be using in all the programs here. Let's go ahead and we're in Edit, Sky Selection. And let's go ahead and grab that same cloud sky, bring that in there and throw that into the background. And this one, I chose this image here. Let me turn the preview off. I chose this image here because we have in the foreground here, we have some out of focus elements. And I got a feeling that this is going to be a little challenging for the programs too. So let's go ahead and get that back on. And man, look at this right off the bat here. Look at what ends up happening to that foreground. I mean, the out of focus branches just look terrible. So is there anything we can do to correct that? Let me also brighten up my sky here in the background too. I can go ahead and try and close gaps, maybe, starting to bring back some of that detail, increase the sky local. I mean, it's just really having a hard time. And we can see down here, we can see through the branches, the out of focus branches, where we can see the cloud in the background. We end up with all these controls and adjustments that we're making. We're going to start having issues with the sky replacement in other areas of this image as well. And look at the branch now, all of a sudden is starting to fade, and you're starting to see the cloud behind it. And I'm going to have to lower these adjustments here. So there really isn't, when you have images like this, you just really got to cut your losses. I mean, honestly, I would probably just crop that out right now, but this may be part of part of your composition and part of your photo where you don't want to crop that out. And you're going to be a little bit stuck here with Luminar. Let's see if Luminar AI can do any better. Let's go ahead and bring this up in here. And let's go ahead and load that sky and open that up. And unfortunately, we're running into the same exact problem with Luminar AI. With this out of focus section here, it does a great job until I start really adjusting these sliders to try and compensate for the out of focus area. Luminar does a pretty darn good job throughout here doing the sky replacement. But it really is this out of focus area that is the problem with this particular image. What about Photoshop? Let's go into Photoshop and let me grab Photoshop. And let's go edit and sky replacement. Okay, let me go ahead and brighten this up, and I'm going to adjust my lighting, turn that stuff down. And let's take a look at that problem area. I mean, the replacement did a great job everywhere else, but in this lighting area, it doesn't look as bad as what we saw in Luminar. If we try and make a couple more adjustments here, maybe fade that edge a little bit. And let's see what happens when we go all the way down to the shift edge. That's not going to do anything. So we're going to want to keep that up. I mean, honestly, at the default, it did a pretty good job. It does still look a little bit weird. It's not 100,000% perfect, but it is, it is pretty close to what we had in the original. And honestly, I prefer Photoshop's, let's get back to Luminar, over Luminar's. This just looks really obvious, really fake. Doesn't look as good as this right here. So I'm going to give the advantage once again to Photoshop. I got one more photo that we're going to take a look at, and this is representative of something that has bothered me since Luminar first came out. I actually did a YouTube video about this, and I think a lot of you people out there, from what I hear too, you guys have noticed this as well. And that is a problem with the AI where it wants to relight your scene, and it imparts a color cast and even some tonal adjustments to your foreground. You can go ahead and try and lower relight scene. And this was the point of my YouTube video that I did, and I'll have a link to that in the bottom. But when you turn relight scene all the way down to 0, it does not still go to 0. You would think that relight scene at 0 would not have any effect on your foreground. Well, look at the sky replacement. Pay particular attention to this white wall here. Let's turn the sky replacement off and on, and look at that. It is adjusting the tone, and it is relighting and doing some adjustments here. So again, off and on, it's affecting my foreground. And this can have varying effects depending on what the AI sees in the image. Sometimes it's even worse than this. What about Luminar AI? Does Luminar AI still suffer from that issue? Let's zoom in here. And we'll wait for this preview to load. We have relight scene all the way off. And we're going to turn this off and on. still has that issue. You can clearly see this getting darker, a little bit of a color tone difference or color cast to it as well. So relight scene at 0, it still relights your foreground. What about Photoshop? Let's go ahead and take a look at this file here, and let's go do the edit and sky replacement. Get that sky in there. And let's zoom over to that area there. Now, right now, it is affecting it because we have our adjustments on the foreground. If we zero out our adjustments, let's zero that out. And now let's turn our preview off and on. And look at that. Nothing at all. No change at all. And I think it's actually kind of funny too, because if you look at the document on Photoshop, let me cancel this. If you look at the document on Photoshop on how to replace your skies, they actually go out of their way to make a point here. A setting of 0 will not make any adjustments on the lighting adjustment. Same thing on the color adjustment. A setting of 0 will not make any adjustments. So here's another issue where, I do have with Luminar, and with Photoshop, it is non-existent. So in this last photo, I'm again going to give the advantage to Photoshop. So there you have it, 5 challenging photos for sky replacement. Photoshop, I'm honestly surprised. Photoshop won on all 5 of them. A couple of them were close, but I still gave the edge to Photoshop. Now, you may think that I intentionally picked these photos or something like that to make Luminar look bad or something. I mean, Luminar has been a favorite program of mine ever since it came out, and, really excited about the sky replacement. For whatever reason, the AI is just having some issues in these more difficult photos that Photoshop, whatever they got going on in the background there, is not having a problem with on the same exact photos. And these are the 5 photos that I picked right off the bat. I didn't go searching, I didn't do this test on like 20 different photos and then pick only the ones that Luminar didn't win in at all or anything like that. So it was just 5 photos at random that I wanted to test and tackle certain problems that I've noticed in the past that the AI has had some issues with. Does Photoshop have issues with that? And, with the windows, seeing through the windows, sometimes the AI in Luminar has an issue with that. We saw that there. Sometimes not being able to see the sky in a raw file, other times being able to see it in a TIFF, and then flip-flopped, no rhyme or reason for that. The issues with the branches, super fine detail, and also with the out of focus areas of your photo. I really am surprised and impressed with Photoshop's very first out of the gate stab at doing sky replacement. I think if you're purchasing Luminar specifically just for sky replacement, you might want to think about Photoshop, at least for right now, because Luminar, they are coming out with, in 2021, they said that they are coming out with a new enhancement to their sky replacement that will be able to do water reflections. And that's something that you have to do manually right now in Photoshop and in Luminar. If you have a water reflection, you want to have that sky reflected in there. So that might be something that, might sway you towards Luminar for sure. And I can't wait to see that feature tested. And again, another caveat that I had here with this testing, the Luminar AI that I was using is a beta version. So, right now, the algorithms for the most part seem the same or very similar to Luminar 4. There's no telling when Luminar AI finally does ship that all of a sudden this AI is going to be a whole lot better. So, think of Luminar AI in this test. Just know that this is a beta version. And there is a possibility that the quality will improve much more. And I'm going to even look at these same exact photos when Luminar AI officially ships to see if any changes did happen. And I'll be sure to let you know. But in terms of Luminar 4, that's been out for a while. Those issues that are in Luminar 4 can definitely be related to the success that Photoshop had in terms of judging quality between the 2 programs. So I hope you enjoyed this battle of the AI sky replacement. Before I leave, I want to mention, go to my website, learn.mattsuess.com, where I have a bunch of sky photos that you can purchase. I have 3 different kits. You can purchase them individually or as a bundle, and they come with free training, bonus training on Luminar, and I am also going to be adding free bonus training for Photoshop as well, and that'll be coming to the kits very soon. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, and if you have any questions at all, be sure to ask them down below. That's it for now. Bye.